Morning, everybody. We go to the Chita. So today we're holding in the portion of Azinu, and we're holding today's Monday, the second reading of the portion of Levi. We're holding on chapter 32, verse number 7. Recall the days of old, contemplate the years of the generations. From Anish, the generation of Noach, the Shal Avicha, ask your father, V'yagetcha, and he'll tell you. The Genecha, your elders, V'yemelach, and they'll also recount to you. Rashi says, what he did to former generations provoked him into anger. One generation and another generation of Enish, who engulfed with the water of the oceans and the generations of the flood. We washed away. Another explanation. You did not pay attention to the past. Now be sure, pay attention to the future. Meaning that he has the power to reward you by letting you inherit the Messianic era and the world to come. Shalavicha, what's your fathers? These are the prophets who are called fathers. As Elijah, it says regarding Elijah, that his Elisha called him, my father, chariot of Israel. Zekenecha, who are your elders? These are the sages. And they'll tell you past events. When the Supreme One gave nations their inheritance, when he divided the descendants of Abraham, he firmly established the boundaries of people. The mitzvah of Bnei Yisrael, according to the number of descendants of Israel. Rashi says this means the Holy One, blessed to be, gave those who angered him the portion they deserved. He flooded them and swept them away. When he scattered generations into dispersion, he could have justifiably removed them from the world, but he didn't do so. Instead, he firmly established the boundaries of people. He let them live and did not destroy them when the time of the building of the story of the dispersion, Babel, the building of the tower. The mitzvah of Bnei Yisrael, according to the number of the descendants of Israel, for the sake of the number of the descendants of Israel, destined to come from the descendants of Shem, according to the number of 70 souls from the descendants of Israel who descended into Egypt. He set boundaries to the nations and the 70 languages. This is mentioned in Tanya many times, because God is the portion of his people, the descendants of Yaakov, who is Cheva Nachlasi, the rope of his inheritance. Now she says, because God's portion is his people, why did he do all this? Because his portion is Latin with them and destined to emerge. And who is his portion? His people. And who is his people? Yaakov Cheva Nachlasi. Yaakov, the rope of his inheritance. Meaning the third of the patriarch, who possesses a threefold merit. The merit of his grandfather, the merit of his father, and his own merit. Making three, just as a rope is made out of three entwined cords. For this reason, only he and his sons became his portion. And either Yishmael, the son of Abraham, and Esau, the son of Yaakov, Yitzchak, became the portion of the Jewish nation. Verse number 10, Yimtze'eyu be'eretz midbar. He found them faithful in the desert. U'b'seher yilei yishimai, in a desolate wasteland filled with howling creatures. He surrounded them, he instructed them, he protected them. Like the pupil of his eye. Now she says, meaning he found them faithful with him in the desert land, for there they accepted the Torah. They accepted his kingship, his yoke, which the descendants of Yishmael and Esau did not. As it says, he shone forth from them, and he came from Seir, and he appeared coming from Mount Paran. We had offered it, the Torah was offered to Esau, the descendants of Esau, and to the descendants of Yishmael. By a howling desolate wasteland, meaning a parched and desolate land. a place where wild animals and birds wail. Even there, they were drawn after their faith in God and did not say to Moshe, how can we go out to the desert to a parched and desolate place? This is indicated by you will follow me into the desert. You say, you surrounded and you circled them, the clouds of glory. You surround them with the tribal banners in 4 directions. You surround them underneath the mountains of giving the Torah by suspending it over them like an overturned barrel. You instructed them there. You gave the Torah in Mount Sinai. Yitzirenu, for the snakes and the scorpions and the nations of the desert. Kishanene, this is like the dark part of the eye, the source of the power of light. Rashi says, is also he provided them all their needs in the desert, taking him to as meaning as umatzalam, it will suffice for them. And umatzalah is on the hills country will not suffice you. He said, he camped them around his divine providence, a tent of meeting in the middle of the 4 divisions of the 4 sides. Verse 11, Kaneshi Yar Kine, as an eagle awakens its nest. A gezel of Yarachayfer hovering over its young. Yifrosh Kanafa Yikacheu, spreading its wing when picking them up. Yisrael Avrasi carried them in its pinions. Now she says, God led them mercy and compassion like an eagle, who is merciful to its young. It does not enter the nest suddenly, but first flaps it and beats its wings above them, between the one tree and the next tree, to one branch and the next, so the young can wake and have strength to receive this bird. Yar Kina, Ya'iraban awakens his children. Agazel of Yarachef, it does not bear its weight upon them, but hovers over them, not quite touching them. So too the Holy One, blessed be, acts in this way. We don't find Almighty excessive powers. When it came to give the Torah to the Jews, he did not manifest himself to them from all directions, or not them only one direction, but from all directions. As it says, God came to them from Sinai, he shone forth to them from Seir, he appeared for them Mount Paran. He came from these 3 directions. And some holy myriads of angels. God came from the south, and it's from the south and for the 4 directions. From the south, this is the 4th direction. Yifir Kanafi Kacheu. When it comes to take the place, when it comes to take them from place to place, it does not take them with his feet as other birds do. But other birds are afraid of eagles, which fly up high above them. Therefore, they carry them in their feet to protect them from eagles. But the eagles are afraid of arrows shot from below. It therefore carries its young on a wing, saying, better that an arrow enter me than to my young. So too the Holy One, blessed, acted this way. I carried you on the wings of an eagle. And the Egyptians pursued them and caught up with them at the sea. They started to firing arrows and stone missiles at them. Immediately, the angel of God came between the Egyptian camp and the Jewish and Israeli camp. Verse number 10, Hashem Badad Yenchenu. God unassisted guides them. Ve'ein imoy el nechor, and there's no other deity who could contend with him. Now she says the Abish himself led them through the desert in a secure isolation. There's no deity with him, not one of the deities of the nation able to display its power or attack them. Our rabbis expound this verse as referring to the future. So Uncle is translated, I will say, these are the words of rebuke in order to call the heavens and the earth to witness. That is a song acts as a witness against them. For God knew they would eventually be disloyal. Failing both to remember that he has done for them in the past and consider what he could do for them in the future. It's therefore necessary to have the wording interpreted referring to both past and future. The entire matter is contention on recall the old days. Contemplate the years of one generation and another. This is what he did for them, and this it will do the same again. All of this, you should all remember. That completes the Chumash for today. We go to the Tanya of the day. We are holding the 20th letter of the Alter Rebbe. It's an extremely deep Kabbalistic letter, and the Alter Rebbe continues. Alter Rebbe explaining the concept that the neshama, that the upper worlds, even the malachim, come from a concept of more of an aspect of say the shtalshlus, cause and effect situation, and therefore one spiritual thing creates another spiritual thing. While the physical world was created ma'ayin liyesh, from something for nothing, not through say the shtalshlus, not through a normal progression of higher to lower, because nothing spiritual can create a physical thing. But ultimately, we have to realize that even the above worlds, even the spiritual worlds above, are creation by God. By God, the world of Atzilus is a creation. They're all creative aspects, even though they're spiritual creations. There's still a creative aspect to Eirei Seif, to God, to God's infinity. Now, Dr. Rebbe is explaining Kabbalistic concept in the spiritual worlds, because every single world has malachim of the world that's created through the midas of the world. So everything that what's just like in the creation of a human being, it's created through entities. So too, things that are created l'mayla, created through entities coming together. Neshamas hamalachim, by conscience, the souls of angels that emerge, with the union of kissing, meaning by the more ethereal manner of union of the spheres, that they called in Kabbalah that the spheres kiss one another. When spiritual entity emanates such as souls of angels, so when two spheres come together in a hugging, kissing manner, they create these spiritual angels that come out from this zivug, from this unity. So to the soul of man also came, which emerged from the union of Zah, which is the midas of the world of Atzilus, and they came about unified with Nukva, with Malchus of Atzilus, and through that was the creation of souls. The union of Zein Ampin with Malchus of Atzilus. So this form of union is termed Zivug Gufni, a physical union, relative to Zivug Neshikin. So that's the difference between the way Kabbalah says the difference between the creation of Malachim, which came through a spiritual union, in comparison to the Nukva, Malchus of Atzilus coming together with Zah of Atzilus is more of a physical union, so to say, in comparison. From this form of union, they derive the birth of the souls that come enclosed in actual physical bodies. That's why this neshama comes into a body, because it came through, so to say, a physical union in comparison to the malachim who came through neshikin, through a concept of a more spiritual, ethereal concept, in the state which exists as existed at Atzilus. However, these souls, but these souls, before they come down to the world of Bria, we're talking about the world of Atzilus, the world of emanation, before they come down to the world of creation, the world of formation, the world of action. In the world of Atzilus, you can't even say there's something. With David and you can't even say there's a yesh. Because in Atzilus, they're totally united with the source, with the light, and therefore, even though they're there, but they're in total unification with their source. Rather, they resemble the category of godness in intense contraction to the point of being on the level of the Shama. Right? Because they're not on the three lower level, Nefesh, Ruach, the Shama, they're still in the higher level. Okay, and they're like the vessels itself of the Yud Spheres of Atzilus, of the Spheres in the world of Atzilus. Shem Bechinas Gvul, which is they are, though they are divinity, they have a nature of finite. They have, because even Atzilus, they're called a name, Chesed Atzilus, Binah Atzilus. So they have a name to it, Adei tzimtzum henitzei baruch hu akav hamalu b'nefesh u'neshama shem, on account of the contraction, the infinite light of God. And the kav is the beam of light that came down, invested into the nefesh of neshama. So they restricted the diffusion of kav that descend. The kav is a ray of light into the kalim, lacks the infinite degree of Ein Sof illumination that constitutes the essence of kav. It is the contraction that makes it possible for the kalim of spheres to exist in a mode of limitation, even though the union with the oidus and the nullification into the oidus lends them to characteristics of divinity. So they have both entities in Atzilus. They have the concept of total nullification. At the same moment, they still have an entity. Even though the yesh, the physical reality, is far away from when it comes into Bria. In a similar state to the souls of Atzilus, as is found within the world of Atzilus. However, with regard to the contraction of God, is vested within them. The Alter Rebbe goes on to say that goes on to state that this is not really a tzimtzum, a contraction involved in the diminishing of godly illumination. Rather, it's like the original tzimtzum that occurred in the infinite light of God, a tzimtzum of such intensity that it will be able to bring about a void, a space for the existence of the world, and so on. This is what in Kabbalah is the black hole. This is where the science came up with the black hole. And that is actually that this black hole has more light than even the what came out from it. So in Kabbalah, this black hole, this symptom, that a calf came through it, it has such an intense light that it cannot even be seen. This original tinsel, unlike the subsequent tinsel, involved much more than a mere diminishing of the intensity of divine illumination. It involved the removal of the light. Tinsel of the kav, which enables it to be invested within nefesh or neshama is similar to this original tzimtzum. What has been said above refers to the souls of Atzilus as they still find themselves within the world of Atzilus, before they are vested within bodies. While they are a lofty world, they share the characteristics of divinity and are not detached entities. The Rebbe now says that even after they descend into lowly worlds, the souls of the early tzaddikim did not undergo change. That's the power of these great people, that they didn't change as they came down from world to world, did not become sundered from godliness. And even the nefesh or neshama of Atzilus has ascended in this world. To the early tzaddikim, Noyim, Amaroyim. Actually, it could be that the entities distinct from divinity remained on the same level as they still were Atzilus. Okay, that's why they withdraw from their bodies, meaning they died when they sought to sin before they sinned. This follows the teaching of the Kunaz Zohar that the soul level of Atzilus departed from the body before the person sins. This spirit too, the source, interprets the verse, your sins have separated you from your God. Sins causes a cleavage between the soul and its godliness, meaning the soul level of Atzilus, which is asked for the godliness, for sin causes the soul level to derive that derives from Atzilus to withdraw. God of Lema, we can even say it's reasonable to assume that also Shekam Alofim V'Divus Alma Yostim B'Galgalta Da'arech Ampim V'Ze'ampim, the thousands and myriads of worlds are in the Galgalta, in the praying of Arech Ampim, states as stated in Kabbalah. Eina Alma Mamish Keina Cholos Da'Atzilus B'Chinas Yesh, they're not even at that space. They can't even consider them as worlds, even they're called worlds. Like the Hecholas, like the worlds, like the chambers of Atzilus, and a form of a Yesh. But they are like the souls of angels. These worlds are like souls of angels that emerge from Ziv and the Shikin, that come from the kiss, so to say, as mentioned earlier, are not the category of a yesh, as the echalis or the bodies of the angels. Nikra almin legabe chinas galgalta dikna. They are called worlds in relative to the rank of galgalta and dikna, which is the higher levels of Kabbalah, worlds in Kabbalah. Ein lukus mamish over yesh mayim, but the angels of the souls of Atzilus are not, however, actual divinity as such able to create ultimately something for nothing. Again, the ability to create Exo Nilo is exclusive Ein Sof. Since Kalim of the world of Atzilus, Sfiras Atzilus are utterly united with Ein Sof life, they're able to serve as a conduit for the creation of Yesh or Nai. Angels of soul Atzilus, however, are not actually divinity, and thus unable to serve in that way. Because they have already emerged and the angels have become emerged and they became separate. The Kalim of the 10 spheres of Atzilus, within which the Kav, the infinite light of God, is vested. For the light is like its source. The luminary, meaning the very core and the essence of the blessed emanator. Whose being is his essence. His essential form being is not, heaven forbid, brought into being of some other thing that preceded him. So the Yebishter, that's Muslim, there's no, he is the source of creation. And the state of non-existence, true existence, and not possibly applied to God's existence, which is an essential form of existence. And therefore, if you understand this, he alone has the power, the echolta, and the capability, to create something from nothing. Something from absolute nothing. Mamish. So God is able to create substance, yes, not only for the degree of ayin that merely lacks existence, but from absolutely nothing. But ayin is that is very antithesis of yesh, of substance addition or existence. So that's why this world is coming from angels. This world comes from real nothingness. There's no capability that this world comes from an ilo and an olo. There's no cause and effect. This world of yesh, this physical world, cannot come from some spiritual entity above it. It's not possible. Godly life force, the ayin, that creates the yesh, is the exact opposite of the yesh that it creates. As such, it's not a cause or reason that relates to or serves as a person of the yesh, as a creator of the yesh that creates it. As ayin is very antithesis to yesh. This is why the creation can only be a result of Kalim, can only result from the Kalim and the Sfiras Atzilus. Within is vested the infinite light of God. And they are actually divinity. However, I point out above, the angels and the souls of Atzilus had already emerged, become separate from the Kalim, cannot possibly act as conduits for the creation of a yesh, so much as they themselves are actually not divinity. Alter Rebbe now anticipates the following question. Since only Ein Sof can create a yesh, a ayin, why do you need there to be Kalim of Atzilus? Why do you need all this? Why could they be able to create this whole world without this whole concept? The answer is, Alter Rebbe goes on to answer this, a deep question. He goes to answer that Kalim enables that the Ein Sof creates the Ein Sof to create a finer yesh. Since Ein Sof is infinite, the beings that result from it would be limitless. If not, the Kalim of the 10 Sfiras of Atzilus give it its finitude. So that's what the Kalim, in essence, reveal the finitude in the infinite. Because as we explained, the Kalim also come from the infinite. So therefore, the Kalim give the capability for the finite to feel its finitude because it comes from the infinite. The Eibishter wanted Kalim, that these vessels should have a finite concept, and therefore to give humanity a finite aspect, but not that it comes from Kalim. The Kalim give the capability for the finitude to feel its finitude. In order for this yesh, me, I, the created by the infinite power of Ein Sof, should have a limit and measure. The infinite light of Ein Sof was vested in Kalim, the 10th bit is Atzilus. For Kalim are limited in so much as they divine into the distinct categories of Chachma, Chesed, and the like. They're one with him. But through already, even though they're one with him, but still they're there. And that already gives the capability for ultimately for there to be a limit world. And that's what the whole point of Kalim is, right? The Eibishter could have created without Kalim, but then the world would feel totally unlimited. And we would be totally bottled to the light. The Eibishter wanted to know. We should have our own, as we explained, God wanted that not only we should feel our own existence. How do you do that? Is by creating within himself the concept of a finite aspect, Kalim Datzilus, that's still one with him, but it gives already the capability for the concept of self-existence. And as it came down from level to level, that's why we actually feel over here self-existence. That's why once the Eibishter reveals himself, Mashiach comes and God reveals himself, everything will be bottled to him. We'll be bottled to the Eibishter. We'll totally do what we're supposed to do because we're going to feel total unity with God. Because it'll be revealed. So even though now it's within us, this Koyach Ein Sof is within us now, as it's always within us, but at this present time, we don't see it. We feel our existence because we connected more to Kalim than to Eidus, more connected to vessels than to light. So you can create with and through them, through this Kalim, creatures that have limited finitude. That's what Chassidus explains what mitzvahs do to a yid after 120 years. They're the same Kalim. The mitzvahs surround the Jew. They're called levushim. And now you come 120 years, after 120 years, you come to heaven, a spiritual place. How are you going to be able to handle it? It's through these vessels. Through the same vessels that the Eibishter created the world, Kalim is vessels. So through these vessels, like a mitzvah is a vessel. It's called a levush. A levush is a garment, is a vessel. So the Eibishter gives us vessels so that the world will be created and to feel its identity. And then God gave us back vessels, mitzvahs, that we would also surround ourselves with. It's called a levush, a garment, a vessel. And through these vessels, we can now go back, because within the vessel is Ein Sof. Just like within the vessel of the world, the created world is infinite, so too within this vessel, every mitzvah is the will of God, which is infinite. Especially in this concept, the way Atzilus, the way Malchus Atzilus, already the vessels of Atzilus gave the capability of finitude within Ein Sof, brought out the finitude of Ein Sof, brought out the finitude in the infinite, so too surely in the world of Bria was more of a finitude, and so too ultimately Yitzir Asir, and ultimately you have a physical world, and then you have a person in this physical world who mamish feels his own existence, simply feels its own existence. And now we're supposed to break that self-existence and realize that Munah and the faith in the Eibishter is our existence. And that's the real, that's our avodah. And we do that through Kiyam Mitzvahs, which will create vessels and which surround us again. And why do we need these vessels? Again, because when Mashiach comes, or when after 120 years, when there'll be Gilei Lakus, we'll be able to see revelation of God, how we're going to handle it. And these are the vessels that are going to give us the capability to handle the Oil Laki that won't be bottled. So if Mashiach doesn't come 120 years, and the Shamas won't be bottled. If Mashiach comes, we'll have the mitzvahs to protect us, even our guf will be bottled. Our guf will be able to handle the Gilei Lakus, the revelation of God, that will be when it will be that time. Deep concepts of Chassidus, beautiful stuff. Today is the 7th day of Tishrei. Film of the day is chapter 39 to chapter 43. You do those 5 chapters, you do the chitas of the day. The Rebbe continues the Yom Yom for the 7th day of Tishrei, and the Rebbe goes to the 4th letter in the word tshuva. We explained the letter Tav, the letter Shin, the letter Vav, and now the Rebbe goes to the letter Beis, the word tshuva. So the Zush Anapala gave the verse, with the letter Beis, in all your ways you should know. The Rebbe Rashab, the Fidik Rebbe, writes in the name of his father. The Rebbe Rashab, the 5th Lubavitch Rebbe, explained this. He said, a person who sets his heart and his mind to observe all what happens to him and around him will perceive godliness, tangibility in evidence. As the Mittel Rebbe points out, men of affairs have an advantage over secluded scholars, business people that go to work, daily work. They see God. They have a greater capability than a scholar who sits and studies all day, and that the former can witness actual manifestation of godliness because they see the Eibishter. They see how God is affecting the physical world. And that's why it's important that Baal Shem Tov would always ask people in business, how was the day? They say, Baruch Hashem. Because they realize, a businessman that realizes that everything that he has is not only his spiritual life, not only his learning. No. In Pashat Parnasa, his day-to-day work, he went out and he worked, was all Baruch Hashem. It all came from the Eibush. And not even a great sage doesn't have that capability. Because they didn't know what it means to go to work, maybe. But a regular Yid has a greatness over them. And this comes from perceiving Hashgacha Pratis. This comes about, I do tshuva, I repent, and I start seeing divine providence in everything, particular divine providence, in the day-to-day living. Not only in the day-to-day of davening or learning, but actually in the day of living. Living life in a physical, material world. And that is when we see the godliness in everything. In all your ways you shall know him. The Eibishter doesn't only be well known in learning Torah, the Eibishter wants to be known in the day-to-day life. How do you see God? How do you see Hashgacha Pratis? Every single thing that you do in life. And that's the 4th letter. I wish you all a good day, my friends. Tomorrow we'll continue at 8 o'clock, and we'll continue to learn the chitas of the day. Have a wonderful and beautiful day, and wonderful.